Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Mark Armentrout, and we're here in downtown Dallas, Texas. We're here today to talk about advanced metering technology and the fact that Texas is a leader not only in the nation but really across the globe in the rollout of advanced metering technology. We're doing this for consumers to have greater control, lower their energy bills, reduce and optimize the whole load on the electric network, as well as give the consumer a level of control that he or she has not had before over individual devices in their homes and individual components in factories and commercial businesses all over. So I would like to introduce our two speakers. By the way, I'm president of the Texas Institute. We are a not-for-profit research consortia based here in North Texas. But we have speaking with us today Tom Olinger, Director in CenterPoint Energy Smart Grid Program Management Office, and Jim Greer, Senior Vice President of Asset Management and Engineering with Oncor. And I don't know which one of you wants to go first.
Well,
Tom?
yeah, I'll
go right ahead.
Great. Thank you, Mark. I appreciate it. Welcome, everybody. Good afternoon. At CenterPoint Energy, we've been deploying smart meters for about a little over a year. We've got about 1 million meters deployed right now. And we all know that one of the benefits that we have been talking about is, as Mark said, the ability to put more information into the hands of consumers so they can make different, perhaps better choices about electric consumption. We know that one of the ways to do that is to put the smart meter on the home, but then provide the consumer a device or some mechanism to actually that actually displays the consumption. And so at CenterPoint Energy, we've got a 500-unit in-home pilot display where we've actually identified participants and put devices in homes of 500 participants. What I wanted to talk about today is the type of results that we've seen. What was interesting is we put this program out as a mechanism to learn about the technology. In communicating with our consumers, we learned quite a bit about the way the consumers also responded to this as well. So let me do this. If I can have you switch slides, please. I'll spend a couple minutes on an in-home display. I won't spend a whole lot of time. But an in-home display is a vehicle or a device that sits inside the home that will allow the consumer to see consumption. The device actually communicates with the meter and allows the consumer to see near real-time. It's not real-time, but near real-time consumption. Near real-time meaning seconds after the consumption occurs. It communicates wirelessly with the smart meter and allows consumers to be able to forecast usage and understand current consumptions. And once again, by having that more real-time, that near real-time information in their hands, they can start making different choices. The other thing that these hand devices do is it starts the whole world of the home area network, the promise of the entire network within the home. So here's our pilot program. We worked with the Public Utility Commission of Texas back in the first quarter of 2010 and identified the pilot. And primarily, what we wanted to do is move the technology from the laboratory out to the field. We have, in fact, a lot of folks are doing quite a bit of experimentation in laboratories, and we at CenterPoint, we're doing the same thing. And we know that if we take a device and put it on a desktop next to a meter or put that next to a cell relay, that we can make that system work. This pilot was a mechanism to move from the laboratory and actually start gaining some experience out in the real world with consumers and the type of problems that we would see out in the real world. The Public Utility Commission granted us a good cause exception. The way the market is structured here in Texas, the deployment of these devices are a competitive retailer in the competitive retailer space. We as the TDUs are precluded from being in this space. But we wanted to make that transition to show that the technology would work, so we got an exception from the Public Utility Commission. And by being granted the ability to put the devices in, we told the Public Utility Commission and market participants that we'd communicate our results. This is one of the vehicles that we're using to communicate results. Our pilot objectives, like I said, is to understand the transition from lab to field. We wanted to gain experience of the type of support mechanisms that would be necessary. We know that at some point in time, consumers are going to be able to go to a big box store, Walmart or Best Buy, and be able to grab a device. And when they get home and take it out of the bubble wrap, turn it on, push the button, we know that for some it'll work well. For others, it may not work as well, and there's going to be some need for support for consumers. We wanted to understand what that level of support looked like. We also wanted to identify what type of problems we would see, what type of diagnostics would be necessary, and start building a knowledge base of the type of problems and the solutions that we would need in order to support the market as we move forward. Like I said, we also wanted to be able to assess the consumer's reaction to it as well.
Can I ask you to talk a little closer to
Sure.
the microphone? Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you.
So here is our participant selection, or the design of the program. We started out deploying devices to 50 employees. We knew that making that transition from the lab to the field might offer some challenges. We wanted to be able to control and manage the expectations of consumers. We know that our employees are more than willing to tell us what went well, what doesn't go well. They're also more than willing to work with us to overcome those things that didn't go well. And with our first 50 deployments with these 50 employees, as you can imagine, we did have some hurdles to overcome. But by working with those 50 employees, being out in their homes and seeing how they reacted to it, and allowing our support staff to work with those employees, by the end of the deployment of those 50 devices to our employees, we had a great confidence that if we take a device out to the field and connect it with the meter, that it would work and that it would continue to operate. Once we got finished deploying to the 50 employees, we asked those employees for the names of friends and family members to participate in the program. And as you can imagine, those 50 employees were more than happy to give us all kinds of names. In fact, we ended up with more participants on that friends and family than we could actually handle. But by then, we were able to take a device, provision it, and deploy it to the field, once again with great confidence that the device would connect, would continue to operate. Once we got finished with the 50 friends and family members of employees, then we moved on to 300 randomly selected, and not quite randomly selected. The participants had to be in their home, single-family residence, for 13 months, and it had to be a single-family home. And the reason we wanted that is we wanted to be able to make certain that we could get the device out in their hands and make it work. We deployed to these 300 consumers in 2 waves. In November of last year, we sent out 300 invitations and ended up with 50% of the people receiving the invitation responding to us, indicating they wanted to participate. We were thrilled to have a 50% response rate. With those 150 participants, we called every one of them and asked them how they wanted us to deploy the device. One of the things that I told my staff is we didn't want to only be consumer friendly or customer friendly. We wanted to be customer cuddly. And so we asked every one of those participants how they wanted the device deployed. And all but 4 said, put it in a box and mail it out to me with instructions. We offered them the ability to set up an appointment. We'd come out and we'd deploy the device, get it up and running. We'd teach them how to operate it and maintain it. We teach them how to take and it turns out that they all said, just put it in a box, send me the instructions, and if I have problems, I'll give you a call. And so, once again, we were pretty thrilled to think that consumers would take a device like this, fairly new to the world concept, and deploy it themselves. Now, we did provision the device to the meters before we sent them out, so the consumer didn't have to go through the provisioning process. But once they got the device, they opened up the box, they pushed the button, it connected with the meter, and it started deploying and started showing their consumption. Along with the instructions, we also sent along pretty clear instructions on how they could enter their current electric price into the device. Once again, the way the market is structured here in Texas, we as the TDUs do not have the price. That relationship is between the consumer and the retail electric provider, the competitive retailer. But we showed through our instructions how a consumer could enter the price. And what we found is that having the consumption is important, but as soon as you enter the price and translate that to cost, that was significantly more meaningful to consumers. In January of this year, we again sent another 300 invitations. Got another 50% response rate. Got another 150 consumers, totaling to 300 consumers. And we had the same type of response. All but 3 or 4 of them said, mail me the device. And they got the devices up and running. The final part of our participants was 100 key stakeholders. And it started off with senior executives and board members within CenterPoint Energy. And we've ended up deploying devices to media relations folks, media people within Houston. We've got the energy blogger at one of the newspapers who's a participant. We've deployed devices to elected officials in and around Houston. We have city councilmen, city councilwomen, we have mayors that have the devices in their hands. And the thought there was, as with Encore, part of our deployment order required us to spend $7.5 million deploying devices to low-income consumers. We wanted to put devices in the hands of the key stakeholders, elected officials, so that when we began deploying to the low income, they knew what type of information their constituents would be receiving. They'd have an understanding of what the program was all about. We've got all 500 deployed. In fact, I think we've got about 505 deployed right now. All of them are connected, up and running. And we have 30 different reps that are representing the consumers. So those consumers are buying electricity from 30 different reps. So it's a broad selection of retail electric providers. In exchange for the device, we asked the consumers to provide us information. We told them we'd give you the device. We wanted, however, to get your feedback on the device. We've actually set up 3 surveys. The first survey is an electronic survey. It's emailed out. We send out about a week or 2 after the device has been deployed. And what we are looking for there is the consumer's initial response to the device. Things like, how often are you looking at it? How did the deployment go? Is it up and running? Did you need any help getting the device deployed? The second survey is about 8 weeks after deployment. And what we wanted to do was make certain that the consumer went through a complete billing cycle before we sent the second survey out. And once again, that gave us the ability to ask questions about the operation of it and how frequently people are looking at it, but also to ask questions in and around whether the device has had the consumer changing behaviors and how closely the device matched the actual bill. Once again, by entering the price, we can calculate cost. The device will be able to forecast consumption at the end of some period. And so we asked the consumer if the device matched their bill pretty closely. The third survey, and this is at the end of the actual pilot, once again, we asked them, is it still up and running? Have you needed any help? And just overall questions about their level of satisfaction. So although each of these surveys has many, many questions, what I wanted to do today was just give a high-level understanding of what consumers had indicated to us from each of these 3 surveys. And so for the first round of surveys, the one thing that consumers told us is that setting up the in-home display was very easy. And if you can look, 91% of the consumers had indicated that the device was either very easy or easy to deploy. Now, once again, we had provisioned the device before sending it out to the consumer, so the consumer didn't have to go through the Smart Meter Texas web portal and provision it themselves. But once the device got to them, 91% of the time, consumers were able to very quickly get the device up and running.